Hi everyone, it's Lisa from IDreaminSoap. Welcome to my channel. Now in today's soap I'm using a new fragrance oil which unfortunately discolours and accelerates. Now normally I wouldn't bother with such a fragrance oil unless I needed it for certain characteristics on a design that I was doing. But this one just smells so gorgeous that it's actually made it onto the final list of fragrance oils that I'm going to be using when I sell my soaps. Now for those of you that know me, you'll know I'm a planner and a tester, and I can often be found nagging other people to test a fragrance oil before you put it in a soap or test that mica colour. So in this video, you're not going to see any uncontrolled acceleration or random plopping of over thick batter into a mould. Sorry if you're hoping for a little bit of drama. Now the design of this soap is a little bit more straightforward than normal, and that's for two reasons really. Firstly, I need to work with the characteristics of this fragrance oil. And secondly, if this is going to be a soap that I'm going to be selling, I need to make something that it's not going to take me 5 hours to produce every time I need to make a new loaf of soap. Now the ideas behind the design for this soap actually came from my friend Whitney. She's the owner and soap maker at Cheeky Goat Soapery. I'm going to leave a link to her website in the description below. She said she'd been planning some ideas to use with a very similar fragrance, and she said to me, why don't I use those in my soap? So I've taken some of Whitney's ideas and tweaked them a little bit and made my final soap. Come on, let's go make some soap.
I'm going to start my soap by making some buttons as embeds to go on the inside. So I'm just going to use this plain little extruder disc to extrude some black soap dough, and I'm going to use these to actually form button holes in the middle of my buttons. Now I'm going to attempt to take this skinny little bit of soap dough and poke it through a hole that I'm going to make in my buttons. So I'm just going to cut it and make it as straight as I possibly can, and then I'm just going to leave it to dry for a while so it stiffens up. Now when I was testing this fragrance oil, I made a little mini batch of soap which produced just these 3 bars, and I'm now going to take these and I'm going to use these to form the buttons that I want as my embeds. Now I'm not going to use anything fancy for a cutter. I've just got a bit of old plastic tubing here. A cookie cutter, something like that would be great. Just make sure that you have a look to see the size that your buttons are going to be and that they're going to fit in the mould to give you the number of buttons that you want. Now it would be really lovely to have a nice long column mould with some buttons, but I think that's just going to be so difficult to try and actually get the button holes going through the middle. So I think these bars will end up being a nice manageable size. So I'll just push out enough of them to give me 3 rows of buttons that I want for my soap. And then I'm just going to use a wooden skewer to poke a couple of holes through the buttons, and that's actually surprisingly difficult to get that to go through and keep it straight. But once I've done those, I'm then going to take those now stiffened up bits of black soap dough that I made and poke them into the holes and then just squash them right in there just to make sure I haven't got any gaps. The fragrance oil I'm using is Cashmere Satin from Scent Perfect in the UK. Now this is a new fragrance to me, and anytime I have a new fragrance I always test them first just so I get no nasty surprises. And you can see here that the Cashmere Satin sample does actually discolour, and I'm just comparing it next to a sample that has no fragrance in at all. The other thing I found is that it did actually accelerate, not really badly, but enough to mean that you wouldn't be able to do any sort of complicated swirls or anything with it. So I'm going to plan my soap so that it works well with the characteristics of the fragrance oil. So colouring wise, I'm going to use Golden Shimmer from Mica Mama, which should blend really well with the discoloration. And then I'm also going to bring in some Red Riot from Mica Mama and Titanium Dioxide to make that go more of a pinkish colour. Now, because of the speed of the fragrance, I can't do anything too complicated on the inside. So I'm going to pipe on the outside of the soap, and I'm going to do what they call Corneli lace, which is a cake piping technique, and it's basically a squiggly line. And I'm going to do it all the way down the side of my mould. So I'm just going to mix up a very small amount of batter and colour it pink, and then leave that to set up so I can use it for the piping. And then once we're at a nice pipeable texture, we can just start our piping. Now, with this piping, there's no real technique at all. It's just doing a squiggly line down the side of the mould. One thing you do need to watch out for, though, is as you do your squiggles, is to make sure you don't do any of the little curves too tight, because remember, you do need soap batter to flow into those when you pour against the side of the wall. And if you do them really tight, you're going to end up with tiny little sort of air pockets. So back to the middle of the soap now. I've been storing those embeds that I made yesterday in a vacuum sealed container so they don't dry out. Now the soap surrounding my embeds is all going to be that one golden colour. So to make sure I get a consistent colour through the various pours I'm going to do, I'll add the mica straight into the oils for the entire batch and mix it in. And then I'm just going to make up a really small first layer, just enough to raise that first button off the bottom of the mould. And then add in my fragrance oil and mix that in. And once it's all combined, I'll just pour that into the bottom of the mould. And then when the base is set up enough, I'm just going to pop in that first row of buttons. So then I covered that row of buttons with some more soap batter and then just repeated again until I'd got all 3 rows of buttons in. So there was nothing particularly complicated about the inside of this bar. I guess the most tricky part was just calculating the right amount of batter each time so that I ended up with my buttons being evenly spaced throughout the bar. And then I'm going to finish the bars off by adding a flourish of piping to the top. Now this piping is going to be pink and white, and because of my discolouring fragrance, I'm not going to put that in the piping. I don't make any changes to my recipe at all for my piping. I just make sure I take it to about a medium trace and then I allow it to sit and thicken up the rest of the way on its own. I just go back and give it a little stir every now and again just to make sure it thickens up nice and evenly. So for the piping on the top, I'm going to fill it with ruffles, so it sort of looks like the edging, you know, that you get on satin pillowcases, that type of thing. And I'm going to be using a Wilton 104 tip. That's just a basic petal tip, and I'm going to be piping with the fat end down against the soap. So I'll just pipe a very close zigzag all the way across the soap, and I'm going to alternate the colours every now and again and just gradually work my way through the soap, bending my zigzag in and out until I've finished the whole loaf. Then when it's done, I will wrap it and pop it. I just pop some spacers on the edge of the mould so it lifts the level of my lid up without touching the icing, and then I can still wrap it and pop it in the oven. I unmoulded it the next day, and here it is before I cut it. And then here's a look at the cut. It's certainly not the most complicated bar of soap I've ever made, but I think it's quite cute. I like the combination of the buttons on the inside and then the two different types of lacy piping on the outside. I think it ties in with the name Cashmere Satin really well. And the fragrance oil does smell absolutely gorgeous, which does make working with this fragrance, which discolours and accelerates, worthwhile. I hope you enjoyed this video and you like the soap. If you do, it would be great if you gave me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see some more videos from me, why not subscribe to my channel? And maybe ring the notification bell if you'd like to be told each time I upload a new video. If you've got any comments or questions, just leave them in the comments box below. I'm really good at getting back to people, so I will answer any questions you've got. Thanks for watching everyone. Happy soaping!